Will Work for Patients, episode 36.
Anything about being in debt is propaganda from banks. There is no reason why a private practice professional should have any consumer debt. Student loans, none of that. A good financial plan to pay off your debts in the quickest possible time with the lowest interest cost, including your home mortgage, would pay you back 6 figures or more. Holding debt must carry some emotional burden. I don't know a lot of emotional burdens that enhance people's lives.
Hey there, Will Workers. It's your host, Frank Sardella, with an exciting episode on tap. Do you have debts? How about a student loan or mortgage, credit cards? Well, did you know you are probably stopping and even killing your practice growth? Our guest today, P. Christopher Music, is going to tell you the whys and wherefores and yes, the hows of getting out of debt and removing the stops from real practice expansion. I'll bet you didn't think your debt had anything to do with it, so listen up today. Today's episode is entitled How to Kill Your Debt Before It Kills Your Practice.
Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
Hey, that's me. All right. It's me, Will Workers, Frank Sardella, your humble host, and I'm here to kick this thing off with a thrill. Today's episode is entitled How to Kill Your Debt Before It Kills Your Practice. Isn't that interesting? And boy, are we going to talk about a touchy subject today. I have found, not only through my personal experience, but through talking to our special guest in the pre-show interview, that this is one of the least confronted subjects, and therefore is one of the most hidden problems that's hindering practice growth. It's something you probably didn't even know was stopping you in any way whatsoever. I am very interested in rolling up our sleeves and digging in with this today. But first, I got to reintroduce you to our guest. He joined us in episode 20. He was just pure dynamite. But today we're really going to zero in on something very specific at the very bottom of the ladder that you'll climb to your financial success. So my guest today is known as the financial prosperity coach, or at least in his circles anyway. What do I mean by his circles? Well, how about NBC, CBS, ABC, Newsweek, Fox, Forbes, The Wall Street Journal, or maybe from his bestseller, Successonomics, which he co-wrote with none other than Steve Forbes. Yeah, that's right, the Steve Forbes of Forbes magazine fame. And that's where I'm going to leave it and turn it over to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the show, Mr. P. Christopher Music. Christopher, awesome to have you back on the show, man.
Well, thanks, Frank. It's really great to be here.
Good, man. So I'm really going to grill you on this topic today. Christopher, if you could just maybe fill in a couple of the gaps about how you work with practice owners.
Well, the short story is I've been a financial advisor for 23 years. I graduated with an MBA in finance and economics, which did not help me at all, how to be an entrepreneur in private practice. Basically, when I deal with private practice professionals, which is the only people I deal with, your private practice chiropractors, dentists, veterinarians, and so on, I've discovered that the number one problem that people have is debt. And having a hard time trying to build wealth in the home and translating the wealth they make in their practices to the home. So I specialized in creating a financial planning system for professionals, which is what I call the private practice millionaire model, and we help them have a far better financial experience while they pursue their passion.
Fantastic. And could you briefly describe Econologics?
Sure. Econologics is a results-based financial planning system. The problem with financial planning as a profession, or you as a doctor trying to receive financial planning, is that it's never evolved into a science. And so I created a scientific approach that is consistent and predictable for everyone who applies it. It's a new subject that is based on objective results, not on a sales process.
All right. Well, in our pre-show discussion, you were actually talking about the whole concept of what is debt? And it was an odd question to me because I wouldn't think to ask you what is debt, because obviously everybody knows what debt is. I think there's a lot of misconception about what debt is.
Yeah, there's two kinds of debt, basically. There's, what we call good debt and bad debt. And if you look at what debt is, it's really the requirement to accumulate some commodity or asset today without having had created the value in exchange for that asset or commodity today. That's what debt is. In other words, you're saying, I need this thing right now, and I'm going to exchange my future value creation, in other words, work and money, to have that thing right now. Sometimes you need it now to produce the value, like equipment or real estate or something like that, and sometimes you don't need it right now to create future value, like consumer debt.
That's a lot different than how I would have described, which is I don't have the bread for it today, so I'm going to borrow.
It's for what purpose is the borrowing? That's the question.
Exactly. Well, how about this? Like, why are we in such debt? I mean, it seems to be running rampant. What's happening?
Have you recognized that all financial education has been deleted? I ask doctors continually, so where did you learn about money in school?
I personally drew a blank when you asked that question. I'm trying to think back, and I drew a blank because I don't think there was any that I can remember.
Exactly. And the other problem we have is the definition of money and the definition of credit have become interchangeable. And money is very different than credit. Money is the symbol of the value of production you have created. Credit is the symbol of value that you are borrowing from someone else's production. You see?
I see.
Because we have a banking system that does not want the public to understand the difference between money and credit, because money does not have a cost to use it. Credit has a cost to use it called interest, and banking institutions are the ones who collect interest. Therefore, the consumer education in the area must be pro-credit and not pro-money for the banks to be able to be as profitable as they are.
So now everybody's more concerned about their credit score than their bank balance.
Exactly. Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's way interesting. It totally changes the perspective. I have the Credit Karma app right in my phone. I've fallen right into that trap myself. What's your credit score? It's like walking around with a Social Security card, but for, financial status.
And that's brilliant marketing.
They've gone and they've branded credit, and here we are reaching for it. How far-reaching is this credit issue? I mean, let's get into the specifics now. Like, what types of debt are involved in this? What are the most popular things you see that people are sort of falling for with this whole credit score thing, and credit is more valuable than your bank balance?
I would have to say a couple points here. Now, first of all, we are walking around with the idea that having a bunch of debt is normal. And the truth of the matter is, it's extremely abnormal. We as a nation have not been debt-free since 1913, when the Federal Reserve Bank was founded and they started lending money back into the government instead of the government making it themselves, which is constitutional, by the way. We all have grown up where having a lot of debt is considered normal. And, of course, that adds on collecting interest on the debt, which is, of course, why income tax exists. So we don't have any recollection of an existence in this country of having a debt-free, no income tax type society. So we are in a matrix, and we are in I say brainwash, for lack of a better term, into believing this is something that's normal. It's not. However, it is a useful tool if we use it responsibly. So we look at borrowing money for essentially three things, and only three things. We borrow money to purchase businesses because businesses create income, they appreciate in value, and they create tax advantages. And the tax advantages actually reduce net cost of borrowing when it's used correctly. So those are always the three rules: make income, grow in value, and have tax advantages. So a business has that. Commercial or investment real estate falls into that category, and investing in specialized knowledge, where you as a professional are investing in yourself and your ability to become more able to produce more value. All other borrowing does not fit those three rules. For example, your house. Your house may appreciate in value, it may produce tax advantages, but it does not produce income. Therefore, because it violates those three rules, you must pay it off as soon as you can to get the best economic benefit. Student loans, pay those off. Student loan, it was for you to get your degree. Okay, that doesn't mean you have a student loan for your entire life. That student loan only represents your ability to be a doctor. So if you go out to the marketplace and hire someone to be a doctor in your practice at, say, $90,000 a year, then the economic value of that student loan you have still paying off is worth only $90,000 a year. If you want to make $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year, you need to be a good executive and an owner. And that takes specialized knowledge and training above and beyond what you spent back in the day. So that is where, if you need to borrow, you borrow to become a better executive and owner in your business so that you can make more money doing what you do.
So you invest in marketing, you invest in administration training, learn how to do the things you didn't learn how to do in college that your student loan didn't buy you.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So you want to handle those consumer debts. Obviously, credit cards, you got to be kidding me. Let's just get rid of those. You should be operating on cash. Those are the general rules of borrowing. If it makes money, goes up in value, and it has tax advantages, then don't worry about paying it off so fast because you're making more value by having the debt through production than you are by paying interest. So we want to pay those off.
A lot of people think a mortgage is a tax advantage. Is that true or not really true?
Well, it's more not true than it is true. First of all, you have to recognize what a mortgage is. A mortgage is an indebtedness against an asset. So when you buy a house, you own the house. When you get a mortgage, you pledge that house as collateral for a loan. So you're basically giving the house away to a bank until the mortgage is paid off. So what is that mortgage to you as a house owner? Is it a liability or an asset? Well, it's a liability. It's indebtedness against an asset, your house. From the banker's point of view, that mortgage is an asset. And as an asset, they want to maximize their return and minimize the risk of that asset. So they're going to condition you to get the longest mortgage with the most interest that can be paid out of that loan and make sure that you pay it.
A practice that's run rampant, particularly in the last 8 to 10 years.
Absolutely. And you and I, as homeowners, look at this mortgage and go, that doesn't make any sense. Well, of course, because it violates truth and violates natural laws, there has to be an enormous amount of propaganda and what I call perception management to get people to believe that, well, gee, I have a mortgage and I'm paying all this interest out, and gosh, because I get a little break on my taxes, it's a good thing. And you have to get accountants to repeat it and bankers to repeat it and loan officers and so on to get everybody to believe this nonsensical untruth. The truth of the matter is this. You're paying $1 of interest. You went out and had to earn that dollar. Then you have to pay it out in interest. And the only thing that's happening is that dollar you earned, the IRS comes along and says, we're not going to give you the extra surcharge on that dollar that you earned at 30% or whatever, because you're going to give it to our friend the bank. That's the only break you're getting. The IRS is just not coming whacking you for an additional 30% on that earned dollar. But you're still paying out $1 to the bank. And we're all programmed to think that, well, gee, because the IRS isn't hitting me for the 30% VIG, that this dollar of interest being paid is somehow a good idea. And in fact, it's not. I'll be the bank. Pay me the dollar. Right?
Yeah.
It sounds ridiculous when you actually break it down, but we have to get through all the propaganda because the bankers have, of course, they have the money to advertise on TV and to give economic incentive to all the financial intermediaries so that we condition everybody to have mortgage is a great thing. We're shaking our head and it doesn't feel right, but I guess it is.
And I guess they're speaking the truth. It is a great thing for someone. It's just not us.
Ah, see? That's exactly right. And it's that kernel of truth that kind of digs in there. Makes it all messed up.
Love it. Love it. Tell me this. First of all, this is a little bit of a shocker, I think, for a lot of the listeners. And, Christopher, this is why I wanted to really hone in on this subject for an entire episode, because I think we need to really drill it home because, I think most of people listening right now are a little bit in shock. I think more and more people are realizing about the mortgage thing, but even the student loan thing is like, really? That was an investment in my future, and I'm in business now. So how does all this relate now to the private practice professional? Person has a practice, and they have all this consumer debt, the mortgage, the student loan, the credit cards, and all that stuff. How is one affecting the other?
Simple. First of all, let's take the economic fact. Every dollar of interest that you pay is one less dollar you have to reinvest into future production. That's the simple economic fact. So to the degree that you can stave off the amount of dollars going out in interest, you can reinvest that into more equipment, more personnel, marketing to create a more viable enterprise. The second factor is, I think, far more worse, and that is the factor of the spiritual and emotional impact on being in debt. Have you ever paid off a debt? I'm asking the general person, they're going to say, yes, I've paid off a debt. How did you feel when that debt was paid off? Oh, I felt great. I felt like the skies opened up and the sunbeams came down and a breath of fresh air, a release, whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
Right. And I have people who pay off their home mortgages and they're jumping around for joy. They go out and celebrate. It's an amazing thing, right?
Yeah.
So if that is the effect that paying off a debt has to a person's psyche, then the corollary to that is that having that debt must be a continual and suppressive burden on that person. I think that is more critical to a person's well-being than, gee, I owe a few dollars, just from an economic point of view.
I'm in 100% agreement. As a matter of fact, the practice professionals that we work with every day, you can cut it with a knife. It's there. And honestly, Christopher, I think most people experience it, but it becomes such a part of life. And this is just what you do that, we don't really notice it until we pay something off, which most people never get the experience of doing.
Well, that's exactly right. So that's one of the first orders of business, really, in any financial planning engagement. I believe that one of the first orders of business is get your debt paid off as quickly and as efficiently as you can. Once you do that, then you're able to really free up your attention to focus on creation and putting that business there for the future.
So are you saying this is an absolute must be done, like you must get out of debt to become successful? And when I say successful as a private practice professional, I'm talking about the ultimate success, like being able to move on to the next game after all your years of hard work and that kind of success. Is this like a must-do to get that done?
I think without a doubt. It's amazing to me how many people will argue with me about, gee, I should have a mortgage, I should have, all this business debt. And business debt is different. It's for very particular purposes. And if you use debt intelligently, you can grow a lot faster in a business. But consumer debt and, having all of these liabilities, it's absolutely critical that you get rid of them as fast as possible, even with a lot of wealth. You know that person who's got a $2 million house with an $1.8 million mortgage, and the cars are leased, and they have this lifestyle. It's great. I mean, fantastic. But the first sign of anything going wrong, it all unravels because they're living so much in debt that they have no breathing room. And I will tell you, as you get older and become less interested in material possessions, you get more interested in life experience. And life experience is much more enriched if your attention is free of owing somebody and having to be held down by material things, and your life is freed up to enjoy your relationships and your money so that it buys you time to travel and have a more rich experience in life, whatever it is for you. So I think that's from the ultimate point of view, as far as success goes, I think that's where we're at.
I agree with you. Even from personal experience, each decade that goes by and you get older, I can attest to that. I've grown with my clients over more than 20 years, and, many of them I've seen go through this process. Tell me this, is there a point where you could say it's too late?
As long as you have breath in your body and some semblance of intelligence and logical thinking, it's never too late.
There's the hope I'm looking for. So there it is right there. That's what I needed. That's what I think all of us needed on this episode. This is an awkward subject to confront. I got to be honest with you, Christopher. I was a little bit apprehensive about attacking this one in this forum. We're trying to really keep it up and keep them promoting and expanding and staying on their purpose and all that kind of stuff. And then you get into debt and you're like, So that little bit of hope is great because, you can recover from anything. And I firmly believe that. But I have to admit, even I wasn't sure on debt. How about an example of a typical situation like this that you've worked with before and sort of how it went down and how it sort of morphed into this ideal?
I guess that's probably our standard engagement. Doctors that are mid to late career. Those are primarily our clients, and they come to us and they are in a certain financial condition. It's usually not very good. It's only really 2% of the ones who come to us are actually in a good condition. The rest need help. And the first question they usually always ask is this going to work for me? And so of course it's going to work for you. These are based on natural laws. It works for everybody. And we have to get over the mindset of, gee, it's too late for me, or gosh, I don't have the ability, or I'm never going to be a millionaire, all of this trash talk. And you know as well as I do, if you have ever read Think and Grow Rich or As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, you are what you think. You get what you think about. And if you walk around saying, I'm in debt, I'm poor, I'm never going to be rich, well, guess what? That's where you're going to end up. And I don't have any time for that nonsense. We have proven conclusively that if you think like a millionaire, you're going to be a millionaire. There's just no other way around it because you're going to start behaving like one. And people who ever achieve a high level of financial success in life walk around like they've already made it. And we have all the time, we have people coming to us with, guys with $2 million in debt. And we put them on a debt reduction strategy. And within 5 years, 8 years, they're out. They own their practice. They own their home. Of course, that means they make a lot of money in their practice because they have to live and they have to, do all these other things too. Mm-hmm. But they do it. Every year we have at least a couple clients call us and say, hey, we paid off our house. I never thought we'd ever be able to do that. We're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars of mortgages.
So awesome.
And they're paying them off, and we're elated. So awesome. They're sending us pictures, and
I can only imagine. Yeah.
All this stuff, and it's just amazing what happens to them when they start operating on all cash. Their businesses start to boom faster because all the attention's freed up. Now they're creating. Now they're expanding into another practice, and the income is flowing, and it's all theirs.
Man. Yeah.
It's just it's such a higher level of financial experience than most people are doing because we have been given this arbitrary that, you have to borrow money to have wealth. No, you don't. That's a lie. You have to be able to produce a product and exchange it to have wealth.
Wow.
Very different thing. And here's my final analysis on all this, Frank. I don't care what condition you're in right now. Whatever financial condition you're in is what you're in. So what? You made the best decisions you could based on the information you had. All I'm saying is let's just get better information and make a decision that you're not going to have a life of financial want. You're going to have an abundant financial life, start thinking like you have it, and start acting like you have it. And guess what will happen? It'll manifest. It always does.
Yes.
It can't help to do but anything else.
That is probably the best financial advice I've ever heard in my entire life, bar none.
Fabulous.
And a couple of things. I noticed that, when I asked you for that example and you said the typical client was
mid-career, 35 to 65 age, pretty much.
Here's the interesting point about that. They've had plenty of time to mess it up and have the old think. Is it that they've spent sufficient time getting in debt and this is the point where the pressure's gotten too much and they now think they have to do something about it?
I think you're pretty much head on. I mean, here's what happens. People will get into a financial condition, debt or wherever it is, and they start to experience pain after a while. And when the pain of making the change is less than the pain of continuing doing what you're doing, only then can positive changes occur. So unfortunately, in the world of financial planning, I've never seen it any other way where someone comes to me and says, oh, yeah, I'm doing awesome and great. Let's go do something, in a financial plan. No, it's usually I drove my financial car into a bridge abutment. I'm bleeding and broken. I can't take this pain anymore. Let's fix it.
Yes. There is a morsel right there to take away from this.
Absolutely.
You
know what? And here's the truth of it, too. There are financial truths and there are financial lies. And if you cannot tell the difference between the two, your financial condition will summarize that for you. If you are living an abundant life right now, you're living your life according to financial truths. If you have financial troubles right now, debt, high taxes, an investment portfolio that's not doing great, a business that's not booming, and so on, then you're following a lot of financial lies. Let's be brutal about it. And to the degree you follow those is to the degree you'll fail, and you'll experience that pain.
There is exactly what we needed. What I'm starting to take away from this is, especially on the point where you say mid-career, as that dividing line, as when the pain gets significant that it's time to actually make that change, that a wise man would go into practice and start out with something like this from the very beginning.
That's the ideal.
That's the ideal. Listen to that over and over, folks, because this is actually the key point. No, it's never too late, per what Christopher said. That gives us some hope, but I don't think that gives you license to let it go until that point.
You can let it go. The only criticism I'm going to have is why in the world would you spend so much time in your career wasting so much time and effort on things that don't work when you can learn the basic truths of natural laws and the procedures to carry them out early on so you could to enjoy the benefits of your own production rather than trying to fight to figure out why you lost all the value of your production over your career.
You just hit it right there, because the only way you're going to be enjoying it while you're waiting and doing nothing is if you're living the life of a rock star. Just so you know, Christopher, one of the video seminars I saw online, you gave a whole book list of recommended literature to read about this, at the top of which, Think and Grow Rich. And I'm actually reading that now per your recommendation and made a list of the other books. But I'm really starting to see this mindset thing that you were talking about seems to precede even confronting the debt, that your mind has to shift as to what you're capable of doing. Like, I can do this. I can be a private practice millionaire. I can make 7 figures in my practice. I can retire and travel around the world. I can do that. Like, without that, even this debt thing is almost a hopeless cause.
I couldn't agree more. You are and get what you think about. This is interesting. It is not so much that you somehow in some way make some money and you accumulate some assets and have some wealth, and then you're going to quote-unquote retire, whatever that means, into this level of bliss or accomplishment or contentedness or whatever the case may be. Life doesn't work that way. The person who's really wealthy is the person who knows that he has the ability to make money at will, because he understands the laws of it and understands production and how to exchange and how to create a valuable service and run a group. And that is far more valuable than any amount of money that you can ever accumulate.
I agree.
So in order to have that ability, you must walk around with a mindset that you have that ability. And until you have that, then what you're going to do is you're going to make some money. And if you don't really have the rock-solid mindset that you are able and can create that money at will, then you'll walk around and you'll be looking at it all the time. You'll be freaking out about its loss, and you'll end up like a typical retiree. I can't recreate this money, therefore I have to watch it like a hawk and freak out about it every day. And when the market crashes, I go into a depression and all these different nonsensical emotional things because I don't know if I can ever recreate it. What nonsense? You have unlimited ability. Just believe in yourself.
Learn it, believe it, live it, Will Workers. This is the stuff right here. Mindset. This is what we talk about every episode. This is what I talk about in all my coaching calls. This is the thing that precedes everything. And also on this topic, debt. What more can you say about that? But being able to live the part of the millionaire, the 7-figure practice owner, before actually in reality becoming it is just absolutely brilliant. So fine, we get the correlation between debt and your private practice and so on. So what is the process? What is the order? Like, you work with a lot of these people, you get them through this step and on to future steps. So what's sort of involved with that, and where does it go from there?
Well, the first order of business is just go make a lot of money in your business. Just focus on making just a ton of money, creating a ton of value, and making a difference. That's going to start creating some extra income into your practice. Mm-hmm. The very first thing you do when that income comes in is you save a piece of it for the future. You don't go paying off debt. You save a piece of it for the future. Because if you never get into the habit of paying yourself because you're the one who produced it, you will never do it. And 20 or 30 years will go by, you'll start freaking out more and more and more about not having anything. And trust me, I talk to 50-year-old, 55, 60-year-old people every day who are, I don't have nearly enough that I feel I need to be able to live my life without working every day. That is right. So put money away first. Never pay off debt before saving. Then you focus on paying off your debt. You simply do a process of ranking your debts by payments, by the interest rates, and figure out which one to pay off first. Usually the highest interest rate one is first, not always, but usually. Then you figure out a couple $100 a month extra, maybe $500 a month extra, and make minimum payments on all your payments except for that number one priority, and make all the extra money toward that first debt until it's paid off. And then you concentrate on debt number 2, and then debt number 3. That's the very simplistic way of approaching it. But when you're paying off debt, don't go out there and start racking up more credit cards or buying more toys with debts on them.
Oh, man.
So this is the number one action you take when you want to get debt-free is to decide. Decide. It means to resolve in one's mind that this is how it's going to be. It comes from the Latin word decidere, which means to cut off from, as in to cut off from any other course of action.
Wow.
If you're going to get debt-free, decide, I'm getting debt-free, I'm operating on cash. I don't care what happens. Then you implement a debt reduction strategy by eliminating your debts in a way that minimizes the amount of interest you pay and the time it takes to pay them off. There's only one most efficient way to pay off your debt, and it's by taking extra money and focusing on paying off those debts as your first order of business after you save. And then you operate on cash. You get out of debt in 3 to 5 years, maybe 7 at the most, and you go on from there and kill it. Those are the real truths of managing your debt.
I can't get over the simplicity, Christopher. You can see it right there, and you're like, how did I not notice that before?
Well, don't forget, it's been carefully created so that you don't see it. You get caught up in the complexity because it makes money for the banks and so on and so forth. So you have to use your wits.
You know, I was just thinking, you got to feel pretty great when you get somebody through all of this. and you get them through to the other side. How does that feel for you, like usually?
That's why I do what I do, man.
Yeah.
It's a thrill. My whole staff, we all celebrate with our It's a beautiful, wonderful thing when they really see the results of their efforts.
What is your greatest success you've had in practice doing exactly this?
Well, I'm going to tell you what my greatest experience was, my greatest success. The financial planning process called Econologics came about because I struggled with my own financial planning. I've studied everything in the field, I mean, to a very large extent, and I struggled myself. I made a lot of mistakes. I spent at least $1 million out of my pocket finding out what didn't work, which is an expensive way to learn.
Yeah,
and
I'll say.
Yeah, and rather than saying, "Well, it was me, I'll never do that again," I went back and said, "What natural law did I violate to cause that loss?" And basically did that a few hundred times, and all of a sudden came up a whole new system that worked like a science, and it worked for me. And I think that figuring that out and finding out a way for my own financial well-being as a private practice professional myself to have a far better, enriching experience doing what I love to do for others without having the economic and financial travails that are typical, I think that's probably my greatest success, because really now all I teach others is that which I applied to myself.
That is like the best answer I've ever gotten on this show. Commendations to you on that, because you spend all this time and money and effort doing it the wrong way, it's not working and whatever, and you put all this sweat equity into it and everything, and then you somehow glean these natural laws. This teaches others that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you just find somebody who's got the natural laws figured out, not just a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo. We're brothers, Christopher. We are brothers.
Yeah, we are, man.
I love that story. Thank you. So how about a little recap here? I really like the mindset thing primarily. I really like the idea that you have to be the millionaire before you start becoming the millionaire, and that you really have to live the part. You have to act like it, think and grow rich, and that type of thing. And then obviously confronting that debt, believing that you can get out of it and reach your goals, and doing the things that you talked about there.
Probably the biggest point is after you've decided that you're going to have an above-average life in this private practice experience, then you have to take action. And the first action I would suggest you take is to get the specialized knowledge that you need to have that private practice millionaire experience. It behooves every professional to learn the fundamental financial and economic laws that monitor the entirety of one's success in private practice throughout their lifetime. If you don't know those basics, then you're going to find out about them, but it's going to be painful because you're going to find out about them by violating them and seeing what happened. And I don't know too many people that prefer that route as opposed to getting a digest of, well, these are the rules of the road, go study them and go apply them and see if it works for you. And only discovering that, well, gee, that didn't quite work. Well, what did I not apply correctly?
It's just a math problem at that point. How much does it cost me to do it the hard way? How much does it cost me to do the easy way? Which one is less? And you're done.
I think that's probably a pretty succinct way to say it.
That is a great recap, and thank you for that. I think a lot of people learned a lot today, and I'm really hoping, listeners, that you have a little bit different of a viewpoint, because I think really the best takeaway for today is to sort of shift your whole paradigm on this, like your whole view of how you look at this. I know I have, and honestly, you had me in the pre-show interview after we hung up. I had time to sit down and think about it, and I'm even like a little bit different on this subject now, and I thought I pretty well had it together, but this was some really valuable input. You know what? Everybody needs to know about this and know about what you do, because without that, you're just a slave to what you do, and it's not going to be fun anymore. So thank you for that.
If you listen to Will Work for Patients, you know that practice growth depends not only upon marketing, but upon understanding of ever-expanding digital marketing platforms. The internet has fast become the largest marketing platform on earth. Nowadays, everyone looks for everything on the internet, and in the majority, from their smartphone. Let's face it, referrals and word of mouth now include the internet. 1/3 of buyers choose the first on the list of search results, of which 9 out of 10 buyers won't go past page 1. People who are searching for what you do are the hottest new business leads, but with billions of websites web pages out there, how do you get found and get business? Enter number1onthelist.com. I can tell you that these guys know that search engine optimization and marketing help connect you with your target audience by optimizing your website and elevating your online presence. Web marketing only works when you are found. Is your website optimized for search? Let number1onthelist.com help you with a free website analysis today. Get found, get business. Visit number1onthelist.com. That's number1onthelist.com.
Okay, well, now for the last word. Who gets the last word? I do. After all, it's my show. What should you take away from today's episode? If anything, I'd like you to take away one thing. That growing your practice may not be as hard as you think, and that not only can it grow better and faster by getting rid of things like consumer debt, you may be hindering your growth right now by continuing in an operating state of carrying that very debt, as evidenced today with a bullet by P. Christopher Music. Christopher, thank you so much, actually doubly, triply, quadruply, for being here today. I can't really express to you like how much I appreciate it and how valuable I think today's content was and how much help I think is going to get out there. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, man. I really enjoyed it.
And I'm definitely having you back repeatedly, for sure. This is a part where we talk about getting in touch and all that kind of stuff, and you mentioned to me earlier that you have a couple of little goodies and perks, and you know I love those. So let's start with how to hook up with you.
Well, the first place to get a hold of me is privatepracticemillionaire.com. You can get on there, and we have all kinds of resources for private practice professionals. One of the actions you can do is we have a 21 Laws of Prosperity for private practice professionals action guide that you can download and learn some of these basic laws and how you can start immediately taking action to apply them into your life right now to get some immediate benefits.
So privatepracticemillionaire.com, and from there it's pretty easy to get the 21 Laws action guide.
Yes, that's right. And if you want to get a hold of me directly, send me an email at christopher@econologics.com.
Simple as the advice you gave today. So thanks again, Christopher. I appreciate you being here. So, my friends, we've come to the end of an epic episode. On behalf of myself, my crew, I thank you so very much for being here, and we'll see you soon for yet another compelling episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.